New opposition agenda. Kazakhstan's democratic opposition sets a new agenda. High waters of Kızılağaç. The village of Kızılağaç is still recovering from the major flood in 2010. The Kyrgyz course. Kyrgyzstan's officials are now fined and even punished administratively for not using Kyrgyz language at work. Karaganda Shake. Karaganda students got expelled from the university for performing the Harlem Shake. Hello, I am Asylbek Abdulov and you are watching Vlast KZ on K+. A significant event, the nationwide meeting regarding the possible referendum, took place in Almaty on March 9th. It was perhaps the first large-scale undertaking of the democratic opposition since Kazakhstan's democratic choice rallies and meetings in 2000, and the nomination of a single opposition candidate for the presidential elections of 2005. The agenda of the referendum is made up of 4 questions, intended to identify public support for several issues. 1. The withdrawal of Kazakhstan from the customs union and the single economic space. 2. The nationalization of leading industrial companies such as ArcelorMittal, Kazzinc, ENRC, and Halyk Bank in return for the compensation equal to privatization prices. 3. The election of local administration heads across all government levels. And 4. The ban on placing a nuclear fuel bank as well as the construction of a nuclear plant in Kazakhstan. The next report has more about the revival and new agenda of local democratic opposition.
The last referendum held in Kazakhstan was in 1995, with the extension of the president's term on the agenda. Should the second referendum happen, the people would be able to play a part in foreign policy and democratic changes in the country. But even in this initial stage, the united coalition was met with a few small glitches. Apart from pressure, there were employment offers in the city administration. Those who had work were threatened with dismissal. We know how hard it is to find a job in our country. We were also pressured through relatives not to go. The idea to hold a referendum is another attempt to undertake democratic changes within the constitutional framework, thinks Aydos Sadikov, member of the opposition from Aktobe, who served time for a fabricated case of hooliganism. Sadikov says all the real opposition members gathered today at the Kazakh concert hall. Even pushed out of the playing field, they are still using legitimate tools of influencing the authorities. In this case, this is an attempt by those members of the opposition that aren't party members. I hope that this forum will lead to the understanding by its organizers that they need to deal with ordinary activists, that there was democracy within the opposition itself, and that all issues were resolved collectively. A lot of leaders don't know what goes on below. But for now, leaders of democratic groups are in no rush to discuss the problems within their own ranks. At a press conference where Bulat Abilov and Kasanov announced the forthcoming national referendum, journalists' questions mainly concerned a quiet split between Jarmakhan Toyagbay and Abilov. The referendum should not be thought as a separate group of opposition members. As you can see, this is a widespread coalition of public associations, people that haven't sat together before. We're united by the pain for our country. It was announced in the news that the NSDP Congress will take place on March 20th. Were you invited? Not yet. We were not invited when the movement leadership changed. Toyakbay's group announced that they were not invited to the national referendum and now they are planning to hold their own national council. The NSDP Presidium Chairman Bulat Abish says Toyakbay's NSDP will gather to review the party program and identify its priorities. The main objective is the dismantling of the existing authoritarian regime. Without that, there can't be any further progress. We're specifically talking about changes within the political system, the status of the president, changes to election laws and political parties. At first sight, another dismantling within opposition ranks, this time between Abilov and Toyagbay, is seen as a systematic crisis in the opposition movement. It can be said that all they do is constantly split. Political analyst Rasul Jomali, however, says crisis is good for party growth. I think the process itself should be welcomed. Despite the opposition's disagreements, this is after all a process. To be specific, the definition of the word crisis denotes the beginning of a process. This is an opportunity for the public or a person to develop. In other words, humanity is moving from one crisis to another. I view this crisis as something new, as an option that the opposition party proposes. Khabar News Agency, new Ruhaniyat party chairman elected. Along with the dismantling of the opposition, the pro-leadership parties are growing stronger. Recently, Ruhaniyat party chairman Altınşaş Draganova was replaced by the executive director of Kaztransgaz, Sirik Sultangaliyev. He now shuffles management of the state enterprise with party leadership. The growth of pro-leadership parties will run alongside the weakening of opposition parties. Former Ruhaniyat party chairman Serikjan Mambetali is convinced that Ruhaniyat, along with Peruashev's Akjol and Kosarev's Communist Party, will work to create a facade of an opposition and democracy in Kazakhstan. We cannot confidently state what will happen to Tuyakbay's NSDP that drifted away from the opposition, but we can use conjecture on the example of Akjol party. A long time has passed since Alijan Baymenov led the party from his colleagues. Baymenov is now in the public sector, while Azat Peruashev chairs the party. A month ago, Akjol party's newspaper called Ult Times has shut down. 2 months prior, its journalists were not paid their salaries, and now the publication's chief editor, Zangar Karpijan, speaks ironically about the mission that party leadership gave to its staff to compare Peruashev's Akjol with Alash Orda party of the previous century. The money was paid by Akjol, then financing stopped for some unknown reason. That was last November, when 15 journalists were not paid wages and became unemployed in 2 months. We criticized ministers, governors and mayors in our newspaper, but who likes criticism these days? Akjol party advertised itself as a successor of Alash party's traditions. We wrote about Alash in the newspaper, but could not link the two parties because Akjol's lies were out in the open. The opposition coalition gathered 500 people from 14 regions in 2 large cities on Saturday. 3 people from each region were elected into the initiative group, meaning there was a quorum. Now the session protocol will be sent to the Central Election Committee. According to procedure, after the committee ratifies it, we'll begin collecting signatures, of which they need 200,000. After the president's approval, the issues on the referendum are voted nationwide. The best-case scenario has the referendum taking place in 6 months.
В ночь на 10 марта в горах Карасайского района Алматинской области с огнестрельным ранением обнаружено тело активиста экологического союза «Табигат» Нурлана Утиалиева.
The body of Nurlan Utiuliyev, an activist of an Environment Protection Union, Tabigat, was found in the Karasai Mountains of the Almaty region on March 10th. It appears the man was shot dead, and his colleagues believe that the murder is directly linked to Nurlan's efforts against the felling of trees in the area. The very next day, March 11th, the regional DIA reported that the motive behind the crime was a family conflict. At the same time, a video showing Nurlan's cousin confessing to the murder because of the money issue was leaked on the internet. It all just looked too familiar for skeptics, who pointed in the direction of several other recent high-profile murder cases, including those linked to Zamanbek Nurkadilov, Askhad Sharibjanov, Haltenbek Sarsimbayev and his assistants, as well as Private Vladislav Chelach. All of them were followed by unexpected and unlikely confessions, mystery suicides or freak accidents. The murder of Nurlan Utiuliyev looks set to become another enigma in the bloody chapter of Kazakhstan's contemporary history.
На дорогах. Поэтому убийство Нурлана Утиулиева, говорят его соратники, становится еще одной загадкой в новейшей истории страны, еще одним ее кровавым пятном. Last
week, the topic of Zhanaozen's tragedy resurfaced once again in the public conscience, with talks that the officially reported death toll of 16 people was actually much lower than the real figures. Weekly newspaper Adam published a story told by a soldier simply named Mikhail N., who served in the interior troops for 2 years. In mid-December 2011, the 19-year-old Karaganda military unit was sent to the Mangistar region, supposedly to suppress religious extremists who were allegedly trying to seize power in Zhanaozen. The nightmares that followed the soldier for months after he came back forced him to turn to the press. Mikhail says that he still hears the pleas for help from numerous victims. Only after the discharge, I learned from the press that these people in Zhanaozen were ordinary citizens and not terrorists. The command simply lied to us. All of us were absolutely sure we were protecting the state against extremists. Later, we loaded bodies onto the trucks and took them out for burial in the steppe. Some were dumped into the sea. There was no remorse, as we just followed orders. They were all religious terrorists to us.
До сих пор нет данных об истинном количестве жертв. Это уже старый штамп.
To this day, there is no data on the actual number of victims, with the topic unfortunately becoming another cliché. All of these unresolved mysteries that keep piling up clearly hide someone's specific political, financial, and personal interests. Perhaps it might be appropriate to compare this case with the Almaty massacre a quarter of a century prior. But for now, we can only guess and speculate, comparing witness testimonies and expert opinions. Next up, we have a couple of episodes from our talk show dedicated to the Zhanaozian tragedy.
Продолжение темы, фрагменты нашей программы о жанузенских событиях 2011 года.
Which moments in the official description of the events differ from those of what was said by Zhanaozian residents?
Очень многое, но прежде всего количество погибших самое важное.
Many things differ, primarily the number of casualties. I talked with a woman who brought bodies from the square and the wounded and helped to wash and stack the bodies in the morgue, and she said that until 9 p.m., 21 bodies were delivered there, but they were continuing to be delivered throughout the night with another 43 bodies, so she in total saw 64. And I also talked with an emergency physician who worked in the surgery ward, and she said that she failed to help 23 people. And these and other testimonies of people who were at the morgue, they all indicate that the number of casualties is completely different to the one that is showed by the official authorities. And it is very sad that we still don't have the complete list.
И очень страшно, что до сих пор нет полного списка.
Однобокое следствие мотивирует людей на проведение собственного расследования.
The one-sided investigation motivates people to conduct private investigations. There was a video on the internet showing the number of police shooting at civilians. This man starts shooting first from a distance of about 35 meters. Then we see a man shooting from 2 pistols at once. Further, we can see how 11 police officers shoot, 10 from pistols and 1 with a machine gun. The investigation, however, provides different arithmetic, and criminal cases were instigated only against 5 shooters. Between the first shot and the last one, there is a time span of 2 minutes, 35 seconds, and the police detachment covered the distance of 185 meters. Considering all of the mentioned, do you believe that 15 casualties is a justified number? Considering that there were 11 shooters plus 1 machine gun, and let's say they did not reload, even if they were not prepared, 15 casualties is unreal. Moreover, the distance is just 30 to 35 meters. Let us assume that these are not special forces and just ordinary police officers, but they still know how to shoot, and the number of ammunition is 5 for pistols and 30 bullets for 1 machine gun. So 15 sounds ridiculous. Next on Vlast KZ. High waters of Kızılağaç. The village of Kızılağaç is still recovering from the major flood in 2010. The Kyrgyz course. Kyrgyzstan's officials are now fined and even punished administratively for not using Kyrgyz language at work. Karaganda Shake. Karaganda students got expelled from the university for performing the Harlem Shake. Stay with us. Vlast KZ will return with more in a few minutes.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublicas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы. В Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook. facebook.com/respublica.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
3 года назад, в ночь с 11 на 12 марта,
3 years ago, on a pitch-dark night of March 12, a tragedy struck the village of Kızılagaş in the Almaty region. 45 people died in the flood caused by the burst emergency dam. More than 400 houses were destroyed. In the years that followed, 7 officials were convicted for the tragedy, with their sentences later softened. Collected donations were unfairly distributed, while the quality of restored houses actively questioned. Parliament member Sidikbay Nurgaziyev even wrote a book about the restoration of the village, but as Radio Azatlık reported, it was heavily criticized by the residents themselves, who asked to re-edit it, unhappy with the final outcome.
Кызылагаш, время испытаний.
On Tuesday, March 12th, the village Kızılagaş held a commemoration of fellow villagers who died 3 years ago. District and regional authorities visited the memorial dinner held in the school gym. The villagers once again recalled the unfortunate events of March 12, 2010. The failure of Kızılagaş Dam claimed the lives of 45 people and left 80% of villagers homeless. The total amount of damage exceeded $60 million. 7 officials of district and regional levels were held liable for the tragedy. As a result, the head of the Department of Emergency Situations of Aksu District, Kumizbek Bayzakov, received 3 years of conditional sentence. The owner of the dam, Kuanız Bikeyev, his deputy Muhit Junusov, and former mayor of Kızılagaş, Yiset Junusov, 5 years in a penal colony. The former head of Kızılagaş Rural District, Yiset Junusov, was released under amnesty in February of 2012. However, nobody invited him to the memorial. He became persona non grata for the local authorities as one of the main people responsible for the tragedy. Village mayor is authorized to issue the land and to be in charge of it. The village is marked by the red line, whereas this land here, as we pass by the dam, belongs to the mayor of the district. That's how the system works. The structure itself fell under the regional administration, not the district. In the end, we had a misunderstanding. I don't even know why was I held liable. Official sentence passed on charges of negligence with aggravating circumstances, as the ex-mayor was aware of the impending tragedy, yet he deliberately failed to warn the villagers. However, the records of the investigation revealed that the first deputy mayor, of the head of the Department of Emergency Situations, and the mayor of Aksu District were informed more than 4 hours prior to the tragedy, yet the court refused to take these facts into account. The water in Kızılagaş and Geshke reservoirs of Kapal district is overflowing. In fact, it has reached the critical point in Kızılagaş, 1 more meter till the flood discharge outlet. We're taking measures. The population in the danger area have been evacuated. I don't understand. What location are you talking about? Kapal. Is it a village? No, it's a district. May I get a hard copy of this information? No, because everybody's gone for today. I hand-wrote it myself. Then could you fax me whatever you wrote down? That's impossible. Another 10 million cubic meters could easily fit. The total volume capacity is 42 million cubic meters, and there were only 32 million as far as I know. Then he called back and started yelling about the dam burst. The rescue teams and military arrived in Kızılagaş only at 1:30 a.m., nearly 7 hours after the initial call. They could only try to help the remaining survivors. The former mayor recalled the events of that day. He arrived at the dam along with 15 other people around 10 p.m. after a call from the owner of the reservoir to help open the floodgates, but the water had already begun breaking the dam. The dam was already breaking through. It was too late to do anything. Imagine this giant 42 million cubic meter structure. Of course, nobody dared to climb up there. We could only observe and report. Directed by the district mayor Tanishbayev, Yiset Junusov stayed on the dam to monitor the water level. He's been informing the local residents over the phone to leave the village. As we observed the situation, I took a 3-centimeter deep empty can and watched it fill up with water in just 2 minutes. We've documents indicating the water inflow of 2,777 cubic meters per second, with only 400 cubic meters flushed per second. Can you imagine? That's a 5-month supply of water which came in one day, in 10 hours to be precise.
2777 кубов.
Due to power outage and failing cellular connection, the teams of volunteers had to walk from door to door requesting people to evacuate. Later in court, the villager residents testified that the mayor has never warned them. The power went out at 9 p.m. and we went to bed. The car with a speaker was driving around informing people to evacuate. I chose to stay home because it was raining and windy outside. I told this guy to go ahead and leave, but he decided to stay as well. We went to sleep and woke up to a thunder-like noise at 10 p.m. Later, when it started flooding, I've put my clothes on and wanted to go outside. Silly me, I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't open due to the pressure. Luckily, I failed to open it because we'd all be dead otherwise. The ill-fated dam was built in 1993 during the Soviet Union Reformation period. The reservoir, which wasn't accepted neither by working nor state commission, remained abandoned for 5 years. Later, the head of the Regional Committee for Water Resources ordered to assign the facility to a local businessman, Kuanish Kiev, for the land irrigation project. In 2009, residents of Kızılagaş appealed to the authorities, requesting to transfer the dam to the state property fund because it is in a critical condition, yet to no avail. We've had a visiting commission when I was a mayor, however, I was not part of it. Then another commission from the regional prosecutor's office, including Assistant Prosecutor Isimov, all members of the sanitation control and people from the water services. They inspected the facility and concluded that the dam is in good condition and can be used again. They let Bakiyev retain the ownership. The reservoir allowed the district farmer to irrigate more than 1.5 hectares of land. It's been 3 years since the land's been irrigated. Yet, even they had water, there is still nothing so and no equipment to crop a harvest, said a resident of the village, Duatkan Karimov. The water washed away the houses along with farming machinery of the villagers. The compensation was even paid. Instead, the local authorities suggested establishing the single machine and tractor station and purchase new equipment. That's exactly what they end up doing. The district mayor was personally in charge of procurement. The grain cleaning machine is stationary. It requires from 26 to 33,000 more to upgrade it. In fact, it's not a set but a single box. There are about 7 tons of stored barley, which we haven't managed to clean. Yet it's one of the listed equipment, and it's worth almost $28,000. The Jan Sugurov Fund, which was established to help the victims of Kızılagaş tragedy and donated by people from entire Kazakhstan, allocated over $1.4 million to purchase the equipment and build the MTS. The purchased units included cranes, sewage pipeliner, and even the paver. We could buy 5 Belarus cranes instead of this one. This $54,000 Zeal paver just sits idle, as there is no use for it in our village. The listed vehicles granted to residents of Kızılagaş include 5 UAZ and 5 Gazelles. However, they're currently missing. They were first brought here and everyone, including the media, witnessed it. Yet later it all was taken someplace we don't know. This book about the tragedy of Kızılagaş was written by the MP Sirikbay Nurgisayev. It helped the residents of Kızılagaş to learn how much assets exactly were donated to their fund by the state, the national companies and ordinary citizens. Quite frankly, the villagers didn't like what they saw. For instance, 70 waste bins, $260 a piece, were purchased with people's money. The metal box shouldn't cost that much. It's rather the price of the golden one. The situation with built houses in the villages also seems strange. The villagers were surprised to find additional 24 houses built on the outskirts of the village, which weren't included in the general layout. They were built on the assets from the very same Jan Sugurov Fund approved by the local mayor. However, the principle of money allocation by the local authorities among the village residents seems very questionable. People would be happy had they given everyone per house. For instance, the family of Chamshi Ahmet Aliyev had 3 houses. They had one of their houses fully repaired and 2 houses given to them. Another resident received 4 houses. 2 were built by the state and he received construction material for the rest too. These houses were built by the village residents themselves. Each one received $10,000 worth of construction materials. However, the project estimates indicated in the documents new houses for residents of Kızılagaş cost at least twice as much. 2 weeks ago, the initiative group of Kızılagaş residents appealed to the prosecutor's office and the financial police. The investigation of spent funds is underway.
В Бишкеке на неделе сходили на нет традиционные весенние протестные настроения.
Last week saw the upsurge and then the quick cool-off for traditional spring protest moods in Kyrgyzstan. At the same time, Kazakhstan's southern neighbor raised the ever-important topic of using the national language by non-native speakers. For instance, MP Natalia Nikitenko wants to see all public servants speak Kyrgyz, but says that stepping up language requirements can work towards certain discrimination, since the initiative implies fines and penalties for violating the state language laws.
Наложение штрафов за несоблюдение закона о госязыке.
Aziza didn't like studying in Kyrgyz school. Her mother supported her wish to study in Russian school, but her father was totally against it until the family moved to Bishkek, where Aziza went to the 4th grade of Russian school. It was difficult at first, but I'm fine now. In my opinion, pupils who study in Russian language schools have more opportunities to get better education. And what about Kyrgyz language schools? Pupils in the Kyrgyz language schools can hardly develop their learning skills. Each year, the number of parents who would like their children to study in Russian schools is increasing. In recent years, Russian, which is an official language in Kyrgyzstan, is gaining more popularity, especially in the south of the country, as the majority of its population go to Russia for seasonal work. The Russian government has recently introduced a compulsory test for the knowledge of Russian for seasonal workers. Whether it was a response or just coincidence, but on the 1st of March, the amended law on the state language, whereby all the documents must now be in Kyrgyz, came into force in Kyrgyzstan. I think that's not fair towards specialists who can't find a job because they don't speak Kyrgyz. Deputy Irina Karamushkina does support the Kyrgyz language development. However, the amended law on the state language that came into force can cause huge labor outflows. According to the deputy, many Kyrgyz citizens who do not speak Kyrgyz have already decided to leave the country. Apparently, it doesn't bother either her colleagues or the president who signed the bill. Some deputies even propose to impose fines on officials who can't speak Kyrgyz. The bill is currently being considered in the parliament. We do not consider this law perfect, but we must join our efforts to make it work and benefit the development of the Kyrgyz language. It is disrespectful not to speak Kyrgyz after having lived in the country for 20 or 40 years.
Инструменты для развития языка должны быть связаны с системой образования.
Tools for the language development should be linked to the education and cultural systems. Thus, the number of children's programs, TV programs, instructional materials, teachers' training must be increased. In my opinion, this bill doesn't propose any real support mechanisms and can become a discriminatory norm. Oleg Kazakov started drawing children's books more than 2 years ago. Having selected his favorite fairy tales, he found translators and now designs Russian folk tales in Kyrgyz. He believes that love of language should be cultivated through favorite fairy tales. Taking into account the local mentality, he turned a Russian hut into a Kyrgyz national yurt and added the second floor for Teремок. So far, about 30 books have been already published. By the way, the project is partially funded by the Russian government.
Вы понимаете, язык нельзя насильно давать, язык надо любить.
Nobody can be forced to learn language. First of all, people must love their native land and culture. I hope that my books help our children learn the Kyrgyz language, love our homeland, and learn more about the world, including other peoples and languages. This is our lovely Manas. It's our precious Manas epic. University teacher of Kyrgyz Takur Japarov is really upset about Kyrgyz people who gradually forget their mother tongue, especially in the capital city, where the majority of residents speak Russian. Japarov says that Manas epic is a perfect example how the native language can coexist with other languages. The Manas epic is written in both Russian and Kyrgyz. It says that people have to know and respect not only their native language, but also other people's languages. I think it is the Russian language that gives us a great opportunity to get information. If we learned only one language, for example Kyrgyz, we would suffer from a narrow worldview. Internet is the main source of information for the 9th grader Azat. However, he wishes he could speak English. Fortunately, the Russian government provides Kyrgyzstan pupils with relevant materials, including textbooks. Thus, Azat has a good opportunity to start learning English. As Russian textbooks are developed for all regions of Russia and contain a different ideology, we have to customize them, adding our national component and considering each region's features. We are going to publish 15,000 textbooks of each item.
что отражается в этих адаптированных учебниках.
A computer keyboard with Kyrgyz letters and several resolutions, including banning billboards which lack Kyrgyz words, are the most noticeable achievements in the Kyrgyz language development. In the first reading, the bill on which civil servants will be fined for not speaking Kyrgyz was passed by the parliament. The Prime Minister gave the Ministry of Finance as a task to raise funds for providing all officials with free Kyrgyz courses. The Ministry of Finance has not yet given any response. Meanwhile, not all teachers were paid February salaries in Bishkek.
Первокурсники Карагандинского технического университета стали героями социальных сетей.
2 weeks ago, several freshmen of Karaganda Technical University followed the new global craze and made their own version of the inescapable Harlem Shake. Unexpectedly, the management of the school was not amused at all with the meme. The board swiftly expelled all participants after declaring their moves dirty and saying that dancers themselves are not worthy of being called students of the technical university.
Недостойными звания студента. Их вычислили и отчислили.
Anton Gubin was one of the first in Almaty who created his own version of Harlem Shake. By means of the social network VKontakte, 23-year-old employee of the large supermarket managed to gather 20 people at the Old Square in only 3 days. On February 17, they performed a Harlem Shake in the southern capital. Anton came up with this idea after he watched a video on YouTube made by either Australian or Japanese teenagers. Initially, there were several groups organizing the Harlem Shake in Almaty, yet after the young people heard a rumor about criminal responsibility for dancing in the square, majority of them lost interest. Anton says that he only put it out there and let the Harlem Shake evolve on its own. People have started to organize everything themselves. This cold weather helped a lot. People wanted to move and stay warm. There was one guy with great organizational skills. He just stepped up and started managing the crowd. I simply stood beside him in amazement. It barely took him an hour to shoot the video and then we called it a day. This is Alexei Zunevich, the man who is wearing the helmet in the video, which started the Almaty-style Harlem Shake. He recalls the shooting of the video with a smile. He doesn't take Harlem Shake simply as a lively dance. It is rather a liberation, an escape from everyday life and relief from stereotypes and social limits. You feel that once you started, this trend might get everybody carried away. It's not the same as dancing in the club. People are just doing their thing, and it might not even be to the beat. People are simply releasing the energy. This splash of energy caused 2 freshman students of Karaganda State Technical University to be expelled. Karaganda Harlem Shake video is only 30 seconds long, yet it became the most notorious in Kaznet. The special employee of KplusTV, who monitors the social networks, has detected the video soon after its release. Turns out there are jobs like that in every public university. The boys got immediately identified, and disciplinary commission of the university has decided to expel the cameraman and the organizer of the video from the university. Later, we researched the web for videos produced by students of other universities, and unfortunately, our video was not the best. It wasn't the worst video, but simply liked it in the least. During the interview to Karaganda journalist, the provost Igorov didn't say what exactly he didn't like about the video. According to one version, the portrait of leader of the nation Nazarbayev seen in the background of the video happened to be crucial. In order to select the proper punishment after negotiating with the parents, we've addressed this to the disciplinary board. The provost is just one person and may be wrong, whereas the disciplinary board consists of 10 elderly professors. The dance became very popular in a short period of time for a reason. Harlem Shake is a landmark phenomenon in modern art, says sociologist of the Russian Academy of Sciences Raisa Barash. The culture becomes the integral part of everyone's life. And this dance allows you to feel yourself a little bit of a creator. In addition, the Harlem Shake helped the society to consolidate and to make fun of its political opponents. We could see how the Harlem Shake turns from the youth uniting dance into a milestone of modern age, which raises the question of do's and don'ts, whether the person is free to choose his own identity, even if it comes to performing the dance freely, for instance. He regrets his actions and promises not to ever do it again. He will put an effort into studying to prove that he is worthy of being KplusTV student. Names of the two expelled students are known. These are Kanat Mushtabayev and Eldar Akhmetov. Both of them had studied for free and had good grades. They will not be able to continue their study in the university only for tuition. On Wednesday, the former MP Sizdykova came to dance the Harlem Shake in support of the guys. We came to support these two expelled students, Eldar and Kairat. We're going to do the Harlem Shake dance, supporting these two to get back into university. Former MP Sizdykova came to dance in one of the shopping malls of Astana. By means of a lively rhythm, she encouraged the Education Minister Zhumagulov to advocate for expelled Harlem Shakers from Karaganda. It shall be noted that the Ministry of Education has already supported the decision of KSTU Disciplinary Board. Yet Sizdykova believes that the minister could still change everything. As the government member and Nuratan party member, the minister simply has no choice but to respond to requests of the youth and enroll them back to the university. I believe this is going to be a very good example of humane treatment of people, because it's very rare in our country. Meanwhile, the sociology expert draws parallels between the Harlem Shake dance and scandalous action of Pussy Riot. Both are classified by Barash's so-called carnival culture of derision. In Pussy Riot's case, they're opposed by Russian Orthodox Church, while the Harlem Shakers in Kazakhstan is the protest against their personal country party. Non-verbal communication through a dance is aimed at ridiculing their opponents and political enemies. Instead of words, they choose to use such a deliberately ridiculous and unattractive physical action. This is a protest action, especially involving the youth. It's not a secret that youth dance to protest against the system. Well, this action is certainly an anti-system trend. Big Brother is watching you. This was the caption in Orwell's novel Utopia 1984. Big Brother is watching you even when you dance. Now this slogan could be written on the walls of car STU. Meme Harlem Shake video uploaded on the YouTube is beating the records as most replicated. In only 2 days, we managed to gather almost 20 people through a social network with help of an experienced Harlem Shaker, Anton Gubin. We're going to do a Harlem Shake dance in our new office. We dedicated this dance to expelled students from Karaganda, former MP Sizdykova, and all those who believe that you're alive while you're dancing. Press like on your video on YouTube and in Vlast KZ.
This
was Vlast KZ on K+. Join us next Monday for more trends, highlights, and another look into personalities of the week. Goodbye.